This is attorney Andy Marcantel and attorney Rachel Moss. We're from the Attorneys for Freedom Law Firm, coming to you from Dallas, Texas. We're here at the NRA National Conference, having a great time. And right here in our little podcast booth, we got another great guest, Mr. Paul Glasco. How you doing, Paul?
Great. How you guys doing?
Great, brother. Welcome to the show.
Welcome.
It's good to be here. Nice to meet both of you.
So a lot of people know you from YouTube, but why don't you just start by introducing yourself to the listeners?
I mean, a lot of folks out there follow a lot of my videos, and I think are gravitating to a lot of what you guys are doing through a lot of our videos, through some of the things that happened this year, or last year, I should say. But I mean, I put YouTube videos out. We take them from a 30-minute firearm show that plays on Fox on Sunday mornings down in Texas and Louisiana, and we pull those clips off and we put them out online. So it started out more as a hobby than anything, and there's so much that happens in the Second Amendment space, as you guys know, so there's never a shortage of something. Obviously, it's usually negative, unfortunately.
We were just talking about like how much content you have. It seems like you're putting out stuff every
day.
single day.
I do, every day, yeah. And that has a lot to do with, I'm sure you guys experience it too with your YouTube channel, but the algorithm with YouTube is figuring out how to feed the monster, so to speak, because they change their algorithm up. If there's one thing that I've noticed is consistency. Even if I talked to another guy earlier today, even if it's the same day of the week, every single week that you put something out, no matter what it is, be consistent with it, and that'll help grow as far as the algorithm goes. I figured out, since I can't remember which day of the week it's supposed to be, I do it every single day.
Love it.
Right?
And again, there's so much content to be put out there, especially with this administration. I'm not trying to make it political, but there's always an attack somehow. I think people realize that this is the chance that they might have to take away or chip at Second Amendment rights during this current administration, and the way Congress is set up right now with the, not much of a majority in the House and being the same in the Senate. I think people are really trying to strike now as far as taking away our rights. And I did actually see this morning, just to mention this, and I'll have a video out on it today.
Okay.
Same day news.
That's
There
right.
you go.
They actually, I don't know if you guys saw this, but I think it's Tom Cotton, has put out another, what I think is, what's the best way to call it, a posturing bill to defund the NFA, but not to defund the NFA. Let me take that back. It's to keep the NFA in place, but take the cost of your tax stamp away. What's the point of that? The $200 tax stamp is not killing people out there, and I say that figuratively, but we want the NFA to go away, right?
Right.
We don't just want to not be charged for it. I don't want a gun registry.
No.
That's the main thing. Let me pay for my $200 tax stamp and don't register my gun. I'd rather that, for a short barrel rifle. Anyway, that came out this morning that, it looks great in the headline. Group of senators putting together a bill to do this with the NFA, and the more you read into it, you're like, well,
Like this is BS.
It's just stuff like that. I mean, you look for good news, and when you think you found it, usually there's something nasty in it that's not good.
Yeah, that's why I love your channel. It's so informative, and you cover so many topics. And I feel like I've noticed recently that there are just attacks on the Second Amendment coming from every different direction. I regularly like to keep up with kind of what's going on in all 50 states, the latest headlines, and I've seen all the states really pushing like bills regarding like red flag laws recently, and adding on fees for concealed carry licenses, things like that. And what do you kind of see as the biggest threat to the Second Amendment right now?
I think you said it exactly. I think red flag gun laws are the most sinister thing out there. They haven't been in place in some of these states long enough for us to know how bad they're going to be abused. Look, I'm a constitutionalist, so I look at things, if it falls within the framework of the Constitution or it doesn't, that's where it should lie, right? The example I always use, if my neighbor, which I get along with my neighbors, by the way, but if I blow grass onto my neighbor's property and they don't like that, and we get in an argument, and I tell them, it's just grass, leave it alone. Well, he knows I'm a gun guy, right? He can call under red flag gun law and say, this gun nut that lives next to me that has hundreds of guns threatened to shoot me. Well, no due process takes place, and they come take my guns, and because I'm a gun guy, a potential threat, right? Because I have videos that show that I shoot a gun, let's do it at 2 a.m. in the morning so we can surprise this guy. Well, if you live, which you guys probably do, if you live in a nice neighborhood, I don't do anything illegal. So if somebody kicks my door in at 2 a.m. in the morning, I immediately will be shooting at them.
You're assuming that that's an invader who's trying to hurt you or your family.
Nobody else has any business being at my house at 2 a.m. We don't throw house parties at 2 a.m. in the morning. So anybody who's there is not invited. And if they're coming through the door, they will get shot at. And I'm not trying to talk tough. That's to protect my family.
Yeah.
So immediately, I'm going to die that day. I think we haven't seen enough of the dangers of red flag gun laws.
Yeah.
And how about just the fact that maybe that doesn't happen? That's the extreme, obviously, but a very possible, extreme. What about the people's lives you ruin? I mean, seriously, what if, what if I'm a school teacher and you red flag me, right? Because you don't like me and you say that I threatened to kill you. If something happens and my face gets all over in the news that they kicked this gun guy's door in at 2 a.m. in the morning, confiscated all his guns, and of course they're going to say how many rounds of ammunition that I have, like that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Every gun I have is legally purchased, not stolen, but that's a bad thing if you have more than two. Oh, this is a cache of guns, So they'll list all that. What about the people who lose their livelihoods over that? I mean, some businesses might look at that, oh, we can't have that, That's kind of a stain on our image. I think that's one of the worst things.
Yeah, I think you're so right. We really haven't seen the long-term effects yet of these laws. Luckily, it seems like most of these bills are getting killed in session right now, but every session, it seems like there's a senator out there that makes it their mission to get these laws in place. And I'm kind of worried it's becoming a much bigger trend in the United States to push these laws.
I agree. And I think the reason why we saw in the Safer Communities Act, I have to do that because it's a stupid title.
Quotes.
Yeah. So when they passed this thing, the federal government, I think, realized over the last 3 or 4 years, as they keep trying to introduce a new red flag gun law, I think they realize a red flag gun law is a violation of the Constitution. They won't tell you that out loud because they still want them to be a thing. But if you notice, they're not trying to push it at the federal level anymore. In that Safer Communities Act, they fund states to implement red flag gun laws because they realize this is a state issue. Now, at the state level, that's still a violation of the Second Amendment, obviously, so they can't do it either. But the federal government, I think, realized, hey, if we can get half of the states to be successful at doing this, this is a big win for us, and they can call it a win for the White House. Hey, look what we did. We got another state to implement red flag gun laws. So I think that's the danger of some of this stuff is that the federal government is going to probably stop pushing it at that level. But you're starting to see it, like you said, like wildfires erupt in all these states. And it's not a natural thing. It's because that federal money is being funneled to them. They may not have ever had the intention of implementing a red flag gun law, but hey, guess what? We have this $500,000 in this bucket over here, and we have to use it for this. So
a lot of it is posturing. A lot of it is sending a message,
That's right.
And, just as attorneys, we're really, really concerned about any workaround to due process,
That's
we
right.
could call it. This is what we call an ex parte hearing, which means you ain't present for it. When somebody else is
That's
saying
right.
how dangerous you are and what a gun nut you are and everything like that, you are because of the nature of this type of hearing, you are deprived of your right to defend yourself and give your side of the story.
That's right.
And we try to make up for that in certain ways in states' laws by saying, well, yes, the judge can issue an emergency order, because it's been brought to the court's attention, you're potentially in imminent danger. But don't worry, we're going to give you a hearing within 10 days or 15 days if you require it. That's not enough.
No, it's not.
That's not enough to deprive you of due process.
The thing, and you hit on a really good point. The thing that blows my mind is the reason why they know they're wrong with these bills, because they will preface the whole thing by saying, this one includes due process. When you read the bill and you realize that, oh yes, there is due process. If we think you're a kind of threat, then we'll call you in and give you due process. If we think you're a big threat, a real threat, then you get no due process. So we'll include a little bit to tell you that there's due process in the bill, but there's still a part of it that doesn't have any due process. That's the one that everybody's worried about. And look, is there any proof that any of these red flag gun laws have ever worked? Seriously, what crime has ever been stopped? Do you know of any? I don't.
No, I don't.
Not aware of any.
No.
Something else I really wanted to hear your take on is the idea of, constitutional carry states. because we've been seeing more states becoming constitutional carry states, like South Carolina recently, for example. But I've
Louisiana.
been in Louisiana. Yeah, I can't forget to mention it. But something I've kind of noticed in these states is that as soon as constitutional carry is passed, then some legislators try to jump in and add on all these additional little restrictions about where you can actually carry a gun. So it's like, oh, we have constitutional carry, but actually there's all these places you're
With
not
a bunch
actually
of little provisos.
able to carry guns. So do you have a take on that in terms of why the legislators are, going about it that way?
I think it goes back to the money that they're given from the federal government. They have to do something. They have to earn their paycheck. And look, the anti-gun movement, I call it the anti-gun enterprise because it's such a money-making scheme. They make so much money off of stoking fear and things like that, that they're very strong in the lobbying space. If these politicians want to have the support and the money, by support I mean money, if they want the money from the anti-gun groups, they have to do what they want them to do. Even if it's just introducing a bill that isn't going to pass. They have to do that. You guys know that. But we saw recently with Louisiana getting constitutional carry passed, immediately New Orleans, which is run by, they call her LaToya the Destroyer.
Oh, yeah.
She's destroying New Orleans, as bad as it already was.
I've heard that nickname from my cousin who lives over there.
And we don't claim New Orleans. We don't claim New Orleans or Baton Rouge. They're both dung heaps. We're just, in Louisiana, that's not part of Louisiana.
Understandable.
Our food's better anyway on our side of the state. But she is taking just exactly what you said. The French Quarter, for instance, that's a no-gun zone. Well, are you kidding me? So you're going to identify an area for the criminals carried before constitutional carry, during, and after it's gone. Nothing changes in their world. Their world doesn't change
Except
at all.
that they have a new place to target where they know people are going to be forced to be disarmed.
That's exactly right. And that's the whole danger of the thing. When you advertise a gun-free zone, you immediately made that a soft target. Immediately. And that drives me nuts. New York they're still
and New
doing
Orleans
all
is like murder capital of the United States right now.
Absolutely. It is in such disarray right now. I think I saw the other day 600 law enforcement officers down right now. They don't even bother responding to some crimes over there right now. It's horrible.
That's crazy. What other issues outside of the gun world? Because I know that you do lots of content on your social media. What other issues are important to you right now that you think we need to work on as a country?
Well, I mean, as a country, obviously, everyone who watches my channel knows the issues that I have with Donald Trump and where he truly stands on the Second Amendment.
Let's talk about it because he's here. I think he's speaking right now. Yeah, I think he's speaking right now.
He's probably got a bigger crowd than I have right now. But I voted for Trump twice. I'm going to vote for him a third time. I'm not anti-Trump. When Trump said, take the guns first, worry about due process later, that hit me right here because I'd already voted for the man. And again, I will vote for him again. I think, and this is just my opinion, this is how I believe. Trump his life is not like my life. He doesn't understand the way a normal person like me would live. He's never been in my shoes. Now he's probably works more hours than me, but he's never worked a 9 to 5. He's never, hey, I got to pick the kid up from school today. You know what I mean? Somebody has to go pick up the kid. Donald Trump doesn't drive down and pick his kid up because he threw up in the class or something.
I'm a hiker and a backpacker, and I remember when he gave a speech and he called it Yosemite National Park. And I was like, there's a man who's never spent a night in a tent.
Exactly. But I was way better off with Trump in there. I do think, and I don't understand why Donald Trump Jr. doesn't have his ear, because Donald Trump Jr. is probably around here right now. The guy's always at SHOT Show, NRA Show, wherever it is. He's always involved in this stuff, and he is a gun guy. I mean, the guy's legit. I've seen him, some of his hunting pictures and stuff like that. I mean, the guy's not just a poser with a gun. He gets out there and does it. I don't know why his dad doesn't listen to him. My biggest, I guess, hope for him is that he realizes that the Second Amendment community is a strong and a loyal one. And there will be people who will not vote for him this time and did not vote for him last time.
Because he said that statement.
Yes. And it wasn't just that, the bump stocks. He also encouraged the banning of the bump stocks. Those two things right there. The bump stock thing, I think he was just ignorant to that. Like, he didn't really know what it was, and he probably sat in a room and like, hey guys, are bump stocks good, bad? You know, he didn't know anything about them. Somebody probably said, they're kind of stupid, and then he said, all right, cool, let's ban them. He didn't know what it was any more than anybody else that talks about that kind of stuff. The due process comment, I think he was trying to satisfy the people who were outraged about the Uvalde thing. He saw so much emotion, because that's when it happened. He saw so much emotion out there and so many people talking about it, and hey, due process, don't worry about that, let's just take the guns. And I don't think he realized what he was saying.
It's when those emotions are high, though, when something happens like that, that it's most important to be consistent and precise.
Yes.
It's most important for him to say, yeah, what happened was terrible, and we're still going to have due process in this country.
That's right. And I would like to see, he has to take, and if he talked about this, he doesn't understand. If he did this now on the campaign trail, if he were to corral Second Amendment supporters, he would win in a landslide. I'm not saying they are the reason why he would win, but that fence that you have out there of, like, you know, the back and forth between Biden and Trump, if there even is a thing, it would be overwhelming if the Second Amendment community 100% wholeheartedly got behind him. If he came out and said, I misspoke, which I know Donald Trump doesn't like to say.
Yeah, I don't
think he's ever said that.
I don't think he's ever said that.
Haven't heard that one.
But maybe you could craft it and say that that's not what I meant. Maybe that's the way out of it. That's not what I meant when I said due process. This is really what I meant. And now that I've taken a look, now that I've had a chance to learn about bump stocks, I think that was the wrong decision to make. You could easily make that right. And I think the Second Amendment community would absolutely vote for him. I think a lot of them are like, I can't cast my vote for somebody that said, don't worry about due process, and I won't vote for Biden, so I'm just not voting. I think that would have made a difference in the last election.
Yeah.
So I think those are big things. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I don't think Donald Trump is going to say anything pro-Second Amendment going forward other than what he says here, which is...
Yeah, he knows about this issue that you're talking about, Paul. That's why he's here right now.
That's correct.
Right? And I saw him talking last night kind of in preparation. He's saying, I'm the best, for you Second Amendment advocates, I'm the best president you've ever had, will ever have. That's why he's here right now. He's trying to unite the 2A crowd. Right?
That's exactly right. And I mean, he could have said some things here, but let's face it, he probably gets, I mean, if we're being fair and honest here, he may be getting some of his guidance from people at the NRA. The NRA has never been a fan of bump stocks. That may be where he made his bump stock statement from. Hey, call up Johnny over at the NRA and find out what their thoughts are on bump stocks. Oh, they're stupid. Okay, cool. Johnny said they're stupid. Oh, let's ban them. You know what I mean? He didn't ask, what does the Second Amendment community think? And I think that's part of the problem. And I'm not trying to bash the NRA because this is their place.
Right.
But the NRA, they are not the respected gun rights organization that they once were.
That's right.
And I'm unapologetic about this, that Gun Owners of America is. And I truly believe that. I honestly believe that. The NRA, I used to be very closely affiliated with the NRA. Did a lot of work with them. Was very proud that, you know, I was an NRA news partner for them and I would do things for them. And I finally, about 4 or 5 years ago, I'm like, you guys are headed in the wrong direction and you're not supporting us. You know, bills would come out, they wouldn't get behind them. If a bill got close, like if they tested the water and thought that an anti-gun bill was going to fail, they would jump in and act like they pushed it across the finish line. Yeah. And that bothered me because you had the likes of Gun Owners of America out there spending their money on attorneys to fight this stuff in court. And the NRA would sweep in there at the end of the whole debate and say, cool, this is not a good thing, and knowing it would fail. You know, they have enough lobbyists on Capitol Hill to know when a bill's about to fail.
Sure.
They know that. So that's the things that kind of bother me about the whole NRA thing. Donald Trump is probably thinking that the NRA is the tip of the spear, just like a lot of these anti-gun groups say, hey, we're beating the NRA. And I'm thinking to myself, the NRA is not doing anything anyway. Yeah. You know, FPC, GOA, all these other organizations are doing the actual groundwork, and the NRA is taking fire, which in some cases is probably fine, because I say this all the time, I don't want the NRA to go away. Not one of them can fight the entire fight by themselves. We need all of these Second Amendment, including the NRA.
So you don't see GOA or these other organizations as like kind of in competition with the NRA in any way, shape, or form, or do you?
For membership.
I see.
That's the only place I see it.
Okay.
They're all fighting for the same, they should be. They're not. They should all be fighting for the same common goal. I think the NRA is fighting their things, which internally is a lot of stuff also, and I think all the other ones are on the other side.
So you think there's an argument to be made that people should join the GOA instead of the NRA?
You know, in this horrible economy, I'd like to see them actually belong to both. If, and this is a big if the NRA would begin to function more like these other ones. And even though I have a preference for GOA, model yourself after any of the other ones. As long as you're fighting for that, I want to hear them talk about red flag gun laws. The NRA will not come out on the record fervently against red flag gun laws. That's troublesome to me.
Yeah.
This is an organization that people think is the tip of the spear in the gun rights movement, and they won't come out fervently and say this is a bad thing. I think that's a warning sign to me.
Yeah, we did an interview yesterday with a board member, a current board member of the NRA.
Okay.
And on the subject of admitting when you were wrong, right, in the context of Trump, the NRA, I feel like, might be moving in that direction. At least that was kind of, he's a public outreach kind of guy that we spoke to. And so my guess is, you know, he has a prepared message that he thought about very carefully. It doesn't mean I'm questioning its authenticity or whether he believes it, but I'm sure that they have a certain unified message that they're trying to project right now.
Yes.
And one of those is, he says, look, the NRA has been suffering from really poor leadership lately. And we own it, and we realize we screwed up, and we realize that we haven't come out on all the right issues. I want you to watch that interview with him, see what you think about it. But the way that he sees organizations like GOA, the impression I got is, look, we all need to be pulling at the same card kind of a thing. But then earlier we spoke to
Wes Verdell.
Wes is an awesome guy and a great ambassador for GOA. And the way he sees it is that, yeah, we're all pulling at the same cart, but the GOA isn't wrought with all of the problems that the NRA has. And so we're able to reach people's goals more efficiently in the Second Amendment community. Any thoughts on any of that?
Well, I mean, I definitely think that, you know, the comparison, I was actually talking to Wes earlier, and he laughed when I told him this, and he said, I kind of said the same thing to them earlier. Like I told him, I think that the NRA spends so much money, and I understand it's a fundraising thing. Spend so much money on mailers, people calling your house, offering you free backpacks with the NRA logo on it.
As he called them, Chinese hats and backpacks.
Yes. And all this, I mean, literally a catalog comes to your house with NRA merchandise. GOA's money is spent in the courtroom fighting for our rights. That's way more important to me. I don't need, as cool as the GOA hats look, I don't need a free one instead of the courtroom fight. If I have a choice, let me take the courtroom fight, and that's what I don't see enough of. You know, we were talking about it earlier with another group of guys, the whole arm brace thing, stabilizing brace thing. If you guys remember, it was probably May of last year, April or May, something like that, around this time last year. Every gun rights organization, except for the NRA, had already come out, and if you guys will remember, and I may phrase this wrong, you guys can correct me from a legal standpoint, that they got to stay on all this stuff for if you were a member of Gun Owners of America and they filed that suit, all of the current members of GOA, you couldn't be arrested or whatever. Like the rule went into place, but it did not apply at the time to GOA members. Firearms Policy Coalition did it too. I know I'm going to miss some of the other ones that got in there early, but if they filed a lawsuit, their lawsuit, all their members were covered under it, so they could continue to have stabilizing braces. It wasn't until the 11th hour, NRA, and I think from pressure, because a lot of people were like, where's the NRA on this? They're looking at all the other gun rights organizations out there saying that these organizations have been on board. They filed their suit months ago. It wasn't until like the week before, I don't know what was coming up. It might have been, they was supposed to go into, I think that's what it was. I think it was the countdown to when it was actually going to go into effect. Like the week prior to, NRA said, we're filing a suit. Oh, cool, everybody under the NRA is covered too. They weren't going to do that.
Yeah, until the pressure. Why do you suppose that is?
I don't know that their internal guys are as aligned with most of us, including you guys. I've seen enough of your videos and where you guys stand that I don't think the NRA is true constitutionalists. I think the NRA has way too many people inside, internally, on the board and all that are old school guys. The kind of guys that if you went to the gun range and you pulled out a fully automatic machine gun and started to shoot it, the old man walks over to you and says, do you have a tax stamp for that? Okay, why would you ever do that? You're at a gun range. Isn't it like-minded people? If an old man came to me and asked for my tax stamp, I would ask him for his ID. Who are you and why are you asking me? You don't have any business knowing this. I don't care if you're the range officer. Kick me off if you want, but you're not going to see, I don't have to show you my tax stamp. That's where I feel like those guys are. There's too many of those guys inside the NRA still, and until that changes, I don't see them changing. There's too many people on the board, so I don't care. You always hear people celebrating about the new person that's on the board. I don't know who you guys spoke to, but that's the person that's supposed to enact change.
He's going to change the whole thing, right the ship, you know.
But one person can't do it. 10 people can't do it. There's too many people on the board. It's watered down. And until they change bylaws within the NRA, you're not going to change how many board members they have.
Yeah.
So when still somebody has an honest conversation about the bylaws, nothing changes. And all these, I did a video on this a week or two ago. Everybody within the NRA is so scared right now. They're just trying to hold on to what they've got.
That's right.
They don't want to rock the boat at all. Nothing's going to change, guys. I'm just telling you. It's going to take more than Wayne LaPierre being in the mess that he was in for something really to change. And I'm hopeful that they change. I want them to. I want you guys to understand that. I want them to be what I think they once were, what I thought they were at one time, like a super strong advocate of the Second Amendment. I believed that early on. I want to get back to where I believe that about them.
Yeah.
I want to think the same way about the NRA that I do about GOA.
Yeah.
That's how I want to feel.
I agree. I've noticed in my lifetime the NRA changing from well-respected to going through that time of turmoil, and now it looks like there's efforts to turn it around again. Overall, I'm grateful for everything they've done in the past for our community. But what I really love about GOA is, NRA is all about joining the membership and, paying funds to the NRA. But GOA, I feel like, really inspires people to actually take action themselves. And I think that's very powerful. And I think that's what we need right now in this community to really get our message out there. What ways do you see GOA kind of calling people to action?
Well, one of the things that I see as far as real quick on the comparison about how GOA and NRA are, I liken it to a quarterback on a really good football team. You guys know, if you know anything about football, is that no matter how talented the quarterback is, if the offensive line sucks, the quarterback's not going to be very good. Well, and I'm going to have to brag on Louisiana. So the 2019 LSU Tigers destroyed everybody they played. Joe Burrow got 90% of the credit, which he deserved, but that offensive line protected him all the time. I see, and I'm certainly not saying the NRA is Joe Burrow. Please do not confuse me. I would never do that to Joe Burrow. But I see the NRA as the high-paid quarterback who gets all the attention, all the headlines, all the media. Everybody thinks they're the reason why the team is winning, and the GOA is on the scrimmage, line of scrimmage, blocking, doing all the real work in the trenches, in the dirt, doing everything, making this guy look like he's doing a really good job. That's how I see these two organizations. GOA is doing the work. And it's not me trying to sell memberships for them. I want people to sign up for them, but they are truly doing the good. Eric Pratt is what you see is what you get guy. What you see him and the fire that he has for the Second Amendment is how he lives his life and how he feels about the Second Amendment. And I respect that. I don't feel like I'm getting sold a bill of goods. I had a picture of me and Wayne LaPierre taken together at, I forget what steakhouse in Louisville, I think it was, after the NRA convention a few years back. One of my viewers made the comment, and it was so funny but so true. He's like, here's Paul in his $20 t-shirt, his $50 pair of pants, his $100 shoes. He said, your whole outfit is probably $200, tops. This guy's got a $200,000 suit on. Don't pay this guy any money. Like, this guy was like, this is not where you should go. I think GOA, to answer your question, they live this. I don't care who you talk to at GOA. They buy into it. I think Eric, being the leader, is people, I think, follow his lead. And I think that's super important. And in fact, I mentioned this to Mark one time, to Eric about Mark, that I see you guys, how y'all conduct yourselves, including Mark, and everyone that I talk to in y'all's organization. I feel like everybody lives that same theme that you guys are pushing. I think all of y'all do that, and I think that's important. I think people who respect their leadership and will emulate how they conduct themselves, that says a lot about those people at the top. because most people, whenever they work somewhere and they don't like their leaders, and I'm not trying to do a self-help seminar here, I'm just saying most people that don't like who they work for, they don't act like them. Like when they leave, if they get off at 5 o'clock, it's 4:59 and they're sitting next to the door, can't wait to leave, right? I bet you guys don't do that, and I'll bet you the GOA people that work there don't do that. Like they've bought into their work because they have strong leadership, and that to me strengthens your entire group of employees. And I see that. I see that with GOA, and that says a lot. I've worked in industries before. I was a regional director for a Fortune 500 company, a utility business. So I've worked at that upper management level. I saw bad leadership. That's why I left. I had bad leadership. But I wasn't disgruntled. I was like, this isn't for me. I'm gone. But I never wanted to get to that point where I couldn't wait to walk out the door because it was 5 o'clock. Because I was the kind of guy that would give you a 12-hour day and not think twice about it. And whenever I started wondering why am I working so hard, that's when I knew it was time for me to move on. Yeah. I don't think people at you guys' organization and GOA operate like that. I just get a better feeling from GOA. Call it what you want, but if it's intuition or just recognizing signs, reading people, whichever, but I see that those people truly buy into it. I'm talking about, you can talk to someone.
It's the buy-in that makes all the difference.
It is.
If you believe in what you're doing.
That's right.
You see the difference.
And turnover, for instance. Y'all probably don't have a high rate of turnover. GOA, I know, doesn't. That says a lot about it, too. If you're just there to cash that check and you're not really buying into the mission, you don't have any stake there. And if somebody offers you 25 cents more an hour, they're going to leave and go take that job. Right. I don't see turnover in the industries that are doing a good job from the top down.
Yeah. Well, it seems that the NRA is now, at least the representative we spoke to yesterday, they seem to at least be in the position where, for whatever reason, probably marketing purposes, PR purposes, they're admitting that, we've made some big, bad mistakes regarding leadership. In your view, Paul, what would need to happen with the NRA? Is it salvageable at this point?
Yes. And to your point about recognizing that there are problems, yes or no question. If their membership had not declined so rapidly and so fast, would they be saying that right now?
That's a great question.
I don't think they would be. And I'm just being very honest. In fact, it took them a really long time to suddenly acknowledge we have internal issues. They acted like they were waiting for it to go away. I do think it's salvageable. I think, again, if it's feared that much by the anti-gun community, then it serves a purpose. And it should be.
And if it gets this many competent gun owners to come together and meet,
that's right,
and organize, then it's important. It serves a purpose.
That's exactly right. And for all the issues that I have with the NRA, this is a great show that they put on. They really do a good job. But I actually wondered if it was going to happen, because I did a story on them in January or February, and from a cash flow standpoint, I'm going to get these numbers wrong, so I apologize ahead of time. I think $49 million or $29 or $49 million in the hole on their revolving line of credit. So they were running off of a revolving line of credit. They had no capital that they were running off of at the time, and people wondered if this show was going to happen earlier this year. So I don't know if they increased that revolving line of credit, but if the bank were to have called it in, this show wouldn't have happened.
Wow.
I don't know how much money it takes to run something like this, but I know it's not cheap.
Yeah, no kidding. When's the GOA show? That's in August,
It's in August, mid-August, I think around the 17th or something like that in Knoxville, Tennessee. It's going to be a great time. I think anybody who is interested in trying to really be a part of something that's going to be special, talked about for a long time, really should consider going. I think that it being the inaugural show is going to be huge for a lot of people. I think that they're approaching things a little bit differently. I think and to the NRA's credit, they started this kind of show like this, so it's probably easy to sit back and figure a better way to do something because maybe the NRA didn't do that right. It's easy to look at what somebody else has already done and say, I'm going to do it a little different.
Right.
And they're doing like a range day, GOA is, and things like that. So they're incorporating some different aspects of it, almost like a combination of some SHOT Show perspective and some NRA show perspective and making it into one weekend. So cool. Looking forward to it.
That's awesome. Yeah, we'll be there. AOR is going to be there. I want to talk about your book here.
Yep.
So we got How to Make a Monster and Why No One Cares. Tell us what this book is all about.
If the best way to describe it, because it's a very involved book, is me taking an honest, comprehensive look at why we have what I call rampage shooters. I call them rampage killers or rampage shooters. the mass media or the media calls them mass shooters. I think that's a purposeful title that they use, mass shooters, because it strikes fear in everybody's heart and it makes you think there's something unpredictable that's about to happen. This is horrible, and I try to use the right nomenclature because I think it's important to use the right words to describe something so you don't confuse people.
Why is rampage shooters a better choice?
Because, and I explained some of this in you got to get the book, right? Isn't that what I'm supposed to say? No, it's actually, for one, it takes the stigma of a gun away. Anytime you're using the word shooters or gun violence, you are stigmatizing that word to be a bad thing. So now anytime you hear the word gun or shooter, you think negative, because every single time you see a headline that says shooter in it, it's a negative story about somebody killing somebody. That also makes people focus on the gun, which is what this book is about. Don't focus on the gun. And I don't do this from a Second Amendment standpoint. I do this from a freaking person who wishes people would stop killing other people. And the amount of these types of killings that have happened have grown, and they've gotten different. I go so deep into this book. I wanted to find the commonalities, first of all. Let me give you this in a nutshell. I did a video after the Parkland shooting in 2017. My curiosity got the best of me. I'm like, okay, every time we hear about a, quote, mass shooting, there's commonalities. You start to hear the same thing. What are these commonalities? You know, if there's a common denominator, what are they? And I will say this, the one thing I did get from my utility job back in the day, we spent millions of dollars on stupid workshops. There was one that I ever got anything from, and it was from determining what a root cause is. If this mic stops working, maybe Paul's talking too hard in it. Maybe that's it. Let's just swap the whole mic out. No, if first we check this, if it's not that, maybe it's the cord. Maybe it's where it goes into his camera.
Work backwards.
Yes,
look
you
for
work
the
your
cause.
way into it. And it really starts with the 5 whys. Why did that happen? And I give some good examples in the book. If somebody wrecks a car, well, why did they wreck the car? Well, she couldn't see. Well, wait a minute. She couldn't see. Why couldn't she see? I don't know. They need glasses or whatever. There are reasons that you work backwards and figure out, why did we get here? And the whole purpose of that is why? So it doesn't happen again. Let's try to fix it. Whenever I put that video out in 2017, I barely scratched the surface. And when I did it, I was like, man, there is something here. And let me tell you the 3 things that I found. First of all, and this is not, there are no religious overtones in my book. This is not a religious thing. This is not a political thing. Fatherless homes. 80% of people in prison come from fatherless homes. 79% of the people who are in chemical dependency treatment centers come from fatherless homes. I'm not saying only dads are important. Don't take that the wrong way. Both parents are important. It just so happens that who gets stuck raising the kid when the dad bails?
Right.
The mom.
The mom.
So that's what you see. So that's why, and it goes right down to it. I mean, you look at even girls, it's not just about guys, although most of your violent criminals are guys. Even girls, they have a tendency historically and statistically of conducting themselves a whole lot differently when the father is around. Yes, so it makes a difference. So it starts out with that.
And I'll just say on that, I couldn't tell you how many times Rachel and I have been standing in front of a judge at a sentencing hearing, asking the judge to take it easy on our client because of bad parenting, somebody leaving early. I mean, it's the number one predictor of criminality.
Right. So
couldn't agree more.
You see the bad side of it. Like you see them before they get sent to prison or jail or whatever. The second thing that I found that, and again, I literally took the quote mass shooters and broke down the commonalities from all their stories. And the other thing that I found was that in most cases they were bullied. And I'm not blaming on bullying. What I'm saying is that is a component. They were bullied in school. And I go into how the bullying thing is a problem. Schools look the other way.
Very true.
I also talk about the zero tolerance policy. That's not right. That's not right. How many times, I was born in 68, so I'm much older. So I was here before a lot of this weird stuff went down. When I was in middle school, if somebody bullied you and you punched them in the throat, they stopped bullying you. Most bullies are not the toughest guys in school. When you implement a no tolerance policy, what you have done is empowered the bully, because now he finds a way to bully you where nobody sees. I'm talking about teachers. Now all the kids still see. So this kid feels ostracized and made a fool out of because the bully is now protected because this kid is afraid to fight back because they'll both get expelled. That is not right. All you're doing is perpetuating what's happening with that bully. The bully wins and the bullied loses.
How
every single
do you
time.
strike the balance of how much they're allowed to respond to? Because obviously, just like with any self-defense situation, there's a point where the force that you use against it becomes disproportionate and wrong.
Punch them in the throat. I think that's what you do.
You could institute that as a policy.
I would, and you know what? And I think it all circles back around to parenting. If my child had to punch somebody in the throat that was picking on them, and I could look my son in the eye and ask him, if my son's like, he was picking on me, made me feel bad or whatever, I would much rather have to fight to keep my son in school and not have him be expelled than have him be the next kid like the 10-year-old that killed himself a couple days ago because he was bullied for the last 2 years. I'll fight that battle with the school system all day long, even if my son was wrong, even if he's lying about the bullying. I'd still rather be able to confront that there instead of going, I wish I'd have gotten more involved.
No, that's fair.
One
more issue in the kind of area of bullying that I have concerns with these days is what counts as bullying, because I think that it's becoming more and more broad.
Yes.
Like you use the wrong pronouns, or you don't acknowledge somebody in the identity that they want to be, or you say something that they take a microaggression to, words or violence, things like that. We want to be sure to be defining our terms of what reasonably constitutes bullying before we say you can punch somebody in the throat for it, right?
And that's true. That's a fair point. Unfortunately, I don't think removing the zero tolerance solves everything, because it does allow that kind of stuff to happen. And then what would you have? You almost have like an indirect bully using the I'm being bullied to go beat everybody else up. I mean, I don't want that either. I mean, but at some point, doesn't an adult need to get involved? I mean, you would think a referee or somebody. So anyway, from the bullying point, then I went into the over-medication. And I have to say this disclaimer all the time. I'm not saying everybody from a fatherless home is going to be the next mass shooter. Not saying everybody who's bullied
You're
is
just seeing
mass shooter.
Reoccurring trends. Yeah.
I mean, statistics don't lie.
Yeah.
You can try to bend them how you want, but if you give everybody the same information, they will come to the same conclusion, whether they want to admit it or not. And the over-medication started with, of course, there's always something that kicks it off. It started with that whole No Child Left Behind thing. When you tell people that it doesn't matter if this person knows anything about civics or whatever, at the beginning of the year, we know these are the questions that will be on the test. We're going to spend all year trying to get these kids to pass this test. They don't learn basic stuff. If there's simple stuff about gravity, Newton's law, or whatever on there, if it's not on that test, they don't teach it. Or it's a one-page thing and it may be one answer on a test, but it's not something that you have taught these people to have them understand the law of gravity or something.
Yeah, the way that I think about it, we're trying to train them to take a test rather than train them to think.
It's 100% what it is. And the problem is, and this is where the problem really gets worse, and again, it's all explained in the book, the teachers, and I'm not cutting them slack. I know very good teachers, I know very bad teachers. If you now, from a federal government standpoint, meaning funding, if you now tell a school, based on the performance of your children on that test, your school is going to get more money because y'all did good, or less money because you did bad, or we might close the school down. In the meantime, every teacher and all the administrators are all getting raises or pay cuts or nothing because of how these kids perform. Well, what does a teacher do? And I'm not saying, I'm not condoning this. What I'm telling you is this is life. If a teacher is a single mom, let's go back to the single mom thing. She's got 3 kids, she's a single mom. Dad's nowhere to be found. She's trying to raise these kids, and she knows that the kids in her class, I have 30 kids that I'm responsible for. If they all do bad, I don't get a raise. I need a raise. Whether she wants a new car, whether she wants to eat better groceries, whether she wants to get out of this really crappy neighborhood and go to a better house, buy her own home, whatever. She's thinking money. Well, I have 30 stupid kids in my class, but all I have to do is teach them these things. Now, where am I going with this? If she has 10 of them that she's thinking, they're kids being kids. Well, the school suddenly decided that it was a good idea to recommend medication for these kids. In fact, if you were able to put a kid on medication, justify the parent putting them on medication, a lot of these schools would give that kid would allow them to have a tutor and give them more time on these standardized tests. So it was an incentive for a teacher to convince a parent to put their kids on psychotropic drugs so they could say, see, they're medicated now. They're a problem. I need more time to teach this child, and I need him to have longer times on the test. So they're doing things to try to get them to get those answers right on the test. It all goes back to succeeding on the test. And what happened was doctors would just prescribe these medications to these children because the kid was being a kid. Look, as old as I am, I'm still ADD. I was very hyper as a child. Is there something wrong with me mentally? Probably, but not there. You know, I remember reading the same page in a book 5 times going, none of this is sinking in. Why am I reading this? I could read it out loud and none of it sunk in because I wasn't interested in it, right? It was a topic that did not interest me. All these things come into one. I even put, what do they call it now? The drawing where the circles intersect. I forget what.
Venn diagram.
Yeah, Venn diagram. So there's a Venn diagram. It's the only illustration in the entire book, and it's a Venn diagram, and it shows you broken home, bullied, and over-medicated. And I stress over-medicated. My son is on medications. He needs them. He would be a wreck without them. My son is severely autistic. So he takes medications, but we ask the questions. Parents don't ask enough questions. They don't ask what the side effects are. All, not some. All of these medications have FDA black box warnings on them. What does the warning say? May cause mania, suicidal thoughts, homicidal thoughts.
Right.
Really? You don't want to ask questions about that? Like, when can my kid get off of them? Can I wean him off? Is it safe to wean them off? If it's not safe to wean them off, some of those stay in your body. It might take 3 months if you stop them cold turkey. The side effects quadruple after that. I'm not trying to speak like a doctor, but I did a lot of research for this book. So there are big time side effects to just taking these drugs.
Yeah, on that note, just real quick to hop in, you know, a same concern here that I have, which is who's defining what counts as over-medicated? You're obviously right that if you take it's a really bad cocktail to have these different factors. But I feel like a lot of parents will kind of doctor shop until they get their doctor who says, oh yeah, you're right.
That's
Your
exactly
kid definitely needs medication.
And
here's the script you want. All right, I'm on to the next. You know?
Please understand too that I'm not saying no one should be medicated. What I'm saying is parents, and let's face it, a lot of parents are young parents. I was an old parent. I was 40 when we had my son. So between my wife and I, she's an engineer, so we asked the questions. You know, we wanted to know, are we supposed to be doing this? Or we would Google what the medicine was. I think there's too many young parents, and I think this happens in school too, but there's too many young parents that are just listening to those authority figures because they said so. Well, the teacher is assumed to be a respected authority figure. And if she says your son needs to be on Ritalin, well, my son must need to be on Ritalin. So they go to the doctor and say, teacher says my son needs to be on Ritalin. Again, I have no problem with kids on Ritalin. What I'm saying is they should not be prescribed like Skittles, and they are. They absolutely are. The numbers are astounding from 2-year-old children taking psychotropic drugs. And the human brain is not fully developed until somebody turns 26 years old.
Right.
So you're rewiring the brain all the way through. I even get into dopamine and serotonin in the book to talk about so you can understand the chemical reaction that's happening inside somebody's brain. So you asked about the book, that's about the book.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Well,
I can tell that you've done a lot of research on
Yeah,
this
I did.
because this is way outside of a lot of the topics I've seen you talk about, and you talk about it so competently. I can't wait to read the book, man.
Well, I love that's why you embrace the term rampage killers rather than, mass shooters, because based on all these factors you outlined, I've noticed none of them are just the fact that someone has access to a gun. There's really so much more going on behind the scenes that really plays in to what leads people to do these things. And something I've noticed is people tend to forget that there are mass killings in many other ways other than with a gun. Some of the largest mass killings have been with knives or someone driving a truck into a crowd. And
or by the pharmaceutical industry.
By the pharmaceutical industry. There's all these other ways for mass killings, and then people latch on to just the gun issue.
Yeah, well, and it goes back to, I think I pointed out in the first chapter or in the introduction, it goes back to the anti-gun industry being such a strong lobbying arm, $1 billion industry. They have money to be made. There is no anti-truck movement out there. There's no anti-knife movement out there. If there were, you might hear more about those types of killings because somebody would have a vested interest to go after them. There's not one, but there are anti-gun movements. And look, when there's a shooting that hits the media, everybody gets emotional. That's how we got that Safer Communities Act. If Uvalde had not happened, that would not have passed in the law. It was based on simple emotion. To me, especially you guys being attorneys, I'm sure y'all see where sometimes injecting emotion is the wrong thing to do. You should wait till you're not emotional and make that decision. Unfortunately, we have legislators that are making decisions while they're excited.
While they're emotional.
Yes.
Yeah, you like clockwork. Whenever one of these events happen, you see a wave of new proposed legislation coming through. Personally, I like the reason that you're going for, talking about it in terms of rampage killers, trying to find a more accurate term. And I know I'm sounding like a broken record. It's the lawyer in me scrutinizing the language, but just the term mass shootings has been defined into obscurity at this point. Like when the average reasonable person hears mass shootings, it invokes an image. You're thinking of something that, you would commonly think of. Somebody went into a highly occupied public place and started shooting lots of people. That's not the definition of mass shooting.
And thank you for saying that, because you're one of the first people that I've heard outside of me say that. And I'm not saying other people are wrong, but God, it drives me nuts that more people don't see, because I'll have people who follow me say, well, it's still a mass shooting. I started in January. I break down all of the, quote, gun violence archives stuff. That's the gold standard, right? CNN, NBC, the White House, all politicians, they all cite that. So that's become the standard now, right? The gun violence archive. Well, last year I started breaking down their numbers. First of all, between school shootings and mass shootings, it was like, there ain't that many. I would have heard about it, right? So I started breaking their numbers down. In their defense, the gun violence archive, they create a incident number, and then there's a link that you can go to all the incident data. So you can pull up the news report from that. They'll break down how many people were shot, what happened. By going in there and doing that, I started breaking monthly stats down every single month beginning in January of this year. And probably 90% of the, quote, mass shootings are gang related, and maybe 2 or 3 are domestic. In this year alone, according to the Gun Violence Archive, there's probably 130 mass shootings. There's one.
Right.
Of January 4th, up in Perry, Iowa, kid walked into the middle school, shot a young boy, and shot a teacher. And I think he shot other people, but the teacher and the young boy died. That's the only mass shooting we've had. So we're going on 130-something days with no mass shootings. But they have it on their archive as this massive number, to your point. They're throwing all these things in the bucket, to your point, simply to make the average person walking by out here think,
oh my God, there's been over 130 mass
I could be
shootings
next.
this year? Yeah.
Absolutely misleading.
It is totally misleading. That's all it is, because in truth, and I say it in my videos, geography and time of day, those are the two biggest elements. I'm not going to be at the basketball court in downtown Detroit at 2 a.m. I'm not going to be shot today. If I don't go there to that bad place at that time of day, my odds of being shot, I mentioned the other day in a post, you have better odds of being bitten by a horse than being caught in a mass shooting, according to them. Now, if you take the actual mass shooting, the one that we've had, I think I put a meme out the other day that said we've had one mass shooting over 133 days with 3-point-something million square miles of country in the United States. One. Your odds are very, very slim. Now, again, if you want to go where somebody's slinging dope in downtown Washington, D.C. at 2 o'clock in the morning,
you're increasing your danger chances.
You immediately did that. And it may be called or it will be called a mass shooting if 4 or more people are shot. Well, wait, they were all gangbangers. And that's what gets me is they'll show the incident, 5 people shot, 3 guns involved.
And if you want to be in the safest possible place you can be, you can surround yourself with thousands of competent gun owners. We're probably in the safest place in the entire country right now.
A lot of people carrying in here right now.
Not the least bit worried about somebody coming in here and causing problems. I feel very safe right now.
Well,
that's right.
I think it's really important that you brought that up, because I actually started looking into some of this data recently as well. There's like a gun violence memorial website. And I looked at some cases where I knew that the individual acted in self-defense and was found to be acting in self-defense. And the alleged victim, who's actually the perpetrator, is the one listed as a victim of gun violence.
Yes.
And these are what's inflating these statistics. This is what is, fear-mongering, causing people to be really afraid of guns. So I just encourage people to really look into the data and see what is it actually covering.
The truth. Look, to your point, real quick, I want to say this. One of the, quote, mass shootings in the gun violence archives, April numbers, was, you guys might remember this happened not long ago, the North Carolina incident where a felon was suspected of having a firearm. Law enforcement showed up with marshals and a bunch of law enforcement guys. There was a shootout. 2, I think, law enforcement officers died. 2 got shot, so automatically they just reached their number of 4 people shot, and then the guy shooting at them died. So you had the criminal shooting at them and law enforcement that more than 4 got shot. That's a mass shooting. Now, when you think of a mass shooting, do you think of that? That's not what I think of. But to your point, you're thinking of me sitting in church, a food court, my kid at school, and some guy randomly walks in and he's trying to shoot as many people as he can. That scares me.
Yeah, I worry about issues of language. I really do.
Yes.
Like, first of all, we can't even have a meaningful conversation about these issues unless we all agree on the terms.
Absolutely.
But we're constantly in a battle over language in this country.
Yep.
And the control of the language is absolute power at the end of the day.
It really is.
Look what just the change of the definition of this does to the entire issue and how people think about it.
That's right. And the way bills are worded in Congress is a perfect example of words mean things.
Mm-hmm.
When they call it the Safer Communities Act or whatever, heck, they just got through having the, border security, where $0 went to our border. That's a perfect example. You call it something to try to create this narrative, but the bill doesn't have anything to do with that. I mean, it's a perfect example that people have stopped there. They have purposely started using words to mean what you want it to mean and do what they want it to do.
Well, you've got to read between the lines. Anyway, Paul, thank you so much for being here with us today. We want to give you a chance to plug anything you want to plug, especially your book.
Joey, let's show some B-roll of this book. Everybody go
You can
buy
catch that at howtomakeamonster.com. We actually have a dedicated website. I think it's still on Amazon, too. I encourage people not to go to Amazon simply because you're paying like $1 more for it or something like that. So go to my website and get it.
Do you get the
cheaper.
proceeds
save that money.
directly on yours?
Say it again?
Do you get the proceeds directly on yours? Because the proceeds should be going to you, not Amazon.
I think Amazon makes $2 a book off of my books.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay, well, we're pro Paul, not pro Amazon.
Yeah,
so
that's
right.
go to his website.
That's right.
Oh.
Anything else you wanted to share?
Just Legally Armed America, my website. We're really ramping up our newsletter, and we'll be doing, actually, you guys will be on there as I work directly, just full disclosure, I work with you guys through promotions and stuff like that. So there'll be links to these guys also. In fact, if my viewers are watching this, use my discount code FTATF, and they're going to get $50 off that sign-up fee. I mean, that's
I like
massive.
that cross promotion there.
That's right.
Was
That's
great.
right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and one of the subjects, I can't say too much about this right now because still some things in the works, but we're finishing up something about addressing something, feature of the program that a lot of clients have been asking us for months. And it's particularly relevant because of our very long and in-depth conversation today about red flag laws.
Good.
We're also very concerned about red flag
Good.
laws. And being able to cover these as part of our program, the AOR program, has been a lot of hoops we've had to jump through.
Nice.
But we have a very exciting announcement coming soon, so stay tuned, everybody. Go and check out attorneysonretainer.us to learn all about our self-defense program and what it can do for you. Check out attorneysforfreedom.com to learn more about our law firm and our philosophy of how we defend people in the criminal justice system, so you can become a client of our firm with confidence. If you like the video, make sure to throw a like on it, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment down below, and share it with a friend. Paul, thank you so much for being
Thank
on
you,
the
guys.
podcast.
Thank you.
It was a
Appreciate you guys.
blast, man.
Yes.
Awesome. All right, everybody, until next time, Attorney Andy Marcantel, Attorney Rachel Moss, and our good buddy Paul signing off. Peace.